Hi, everybody. For this episode, we're joined by Ndiilokelwa Nthengwe from the Khomas Region in Namibia. She is the executive director and co founder of Voices for Choices and Rights Coalition, and she's the chief executive officer and founder of her own tech company. Dilo is an artist at heart and uses her artistic side to advocate for social justice issues. She is a warm and humble leader doing what she can to make the world a better place for underrepresented individuals. Dilo, thanks for being a guest on The Passionate Youth Worker.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
It is wonderful to have you here. And since the day I met you, I have been excited for recording this episode. So let's dive right in. Dilo, your mom was also a founder of a social program and an activist in her own rights. Can you talk a little bit about what your mom used to advocate for and what kind of program she founded?
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, my mom was a nurse by profession. She was working for the state hospital, one of our oldest state hospitals to date in the country, the Katutura State Hospital. And during the time that she was in working in the hospital, she always tended to, especially mothers and women living with HIV, particularly the mothers who were breastfeeding. And she found a gap actually within the system that, the mothers can actually transmit the virus, the HIV virus to their babies if they are breastfeeding. So my mom decided then to start buying food hampers and milk to support the mothers in order for them not to breastfeed. And so through this process, she would store some of the food in the cabinet in her office, just a tiny little cabinet of, just a few, samples of milk, some food hampers, and so forth. And it really did also spread because through word of mouth, more and more mothers that were not even being treated by my mom as a nurse would come to her asking and requesting for either formula milk or for some food in order for them, not just for breastfeeding, but also for sustenance, because my mother, especially at the state hospital, was working with majority poor and black women who really didn't have access to the to many other resources. And so in the process, I suppose that more and more mothers came, and my mom decided to move this project. It wasn't called anything yet, but she just thought that it would be a project. She moved it to our home, and so through this process, it's when we found that over the months, about 300 women, mothers would come to our house where they would receive food hampers and milk. Now, this had already progressed towards the stage where my mother would receive some funding in kind or donations in kind just to be able to get the projects running. And through this process, she founded Mount Sinai Center, which was what the organization was called. And when she founded Mount Sinai Center, she officially registered through also, I suppose, some Good Samaritans that actually came from America. And so when she incorporated her organization, so the mothers would be, they would come to our house, they would get food hampers, formula milk, they would still be getting ongoing HIV tests, they would be initiated on the HIV medication, etc. Until the city of Windhoek in Namibia donated a plot of land to my mother. And through this process, she conceptualized the building, put together a whole sketch of how she wants it to look like, and it was built. So after that, all of these beneficiaries would go to the center, and that's how she established her system. So my mother
Wow.
definitely built, from the ground up, just her organization, just from the gap where she recognized that actually these mothers and the kids are vulnerable, and we need to find other ways to fill those gaps.
Wow, your mother sounds like an incredible person, and she probably saved the lives of a lot of people just through some of the simple steps she took because she recognized there was a need there.
Mm.
And you were a young person watching this. What were you thinking? Did this just seem like a normal thing? You didn't even, it just was part of who your family was? Or did you recognize that this is a pretty special thing your mother's doing?
I didn't actually realize that what she was doing was, I suppose, very, very significant because we were very, very young. But later on, it did grow on us because, for example, we would go shopping with my mom and with the rest of the family to buy the formula milk or to buy the food hampers. And in most cases, when it was during the time that we would put together these hampers, a lot of family members would come over to our house, and it would probably create that family bond between us. So we would put together the plastic bags, we would put together all the different food samples in one bag. We would ration out how many are coming this Saturday, because she would the activities would be hosted every second Saturday of the month. So every other second Saturday, we know what we are preparing for. Our neighbors also would also somehow get involved, because our house would get very full at some point, hosting between 300 to 400 mothers, and then children also running around. So we were basically tasked with just managing a few things here and there. But I think that process definitely did change my life. I think right now I can say that there are a lot of full circle moments that I will touch on, but it definitely changed my life.
I bet it did. And it caused you to be just this intense advocate for people who are not treated justly in this world. And you're doing so many great things with that. And we'll get into all that.
Mhm.
But did you know that then that you were going to be doing this kind of work that you're doing now then, or did you want to do other pursuits? I know you got this technology thing. You're really good with that. You loved arts. Art is kind of who you are deep down inside. Did you know you were going to always be an activist and do things, or were you pursuing something else at first when you were first starting out, kind of out of school in your professional life?
Mm, I didn't know because I've always wanted to be a dancer. In
Yeah.
fact, I wanted to dance and I wanted to play soccer because I fell in love with soccer and as a sport in my street, playing against all of my brothers and winning and being good at it and being better than them. And at the same time, I think I fell in love with dance because of my Cuban stepfather. He used to love dancing, and
Mm,
I enjoyed dancing a lot with him. But later on, I decided to incorporate different genres in my dancing. And then at some point, I was elevated to a point where I would dance professionally at the National Theatre of Namibia or through different platforms at competitions. And later on, I would attract crowds, I would attract that kind of attention. And so I fell in love with dancing, and soccer was also one of those ones that I really did enjoy doing because I did do it very well. So I've never imagined that I would later on find myself also being sort of in the same kind of sector that my mom worked in within the civil society space. And yeah, so dancing has always been my passion.
yeah. What were you hoping to do with a dancing career? Did you want to just be in shows? Did you want to be in movies? Did you want to dance internationally? I mean, what were your dreams about dancing? What did you think you were going to accomplish with that?
I wanted to take on dancing as an academic discipline, actually. I wanted to
Huh.
understand how dancing is, how we move. And that's why I suppose that even after high school, I applied to one of the other art schools in South Africa, at least two of them. And that was really around incorporating drama, of course, but I wanted to study what dancing is and what because for me I've been dancing almost sort of like informally in other spaces, but I was able to catch on with the beats and how many steps it takes to make a certain move or to express yourself musically through dance. And I thought that that might be something that could be measured or that I could study. So I think that I've applied to those schools and I was accepted into the other, but I couldn't afford, of course. And later on, I opted for studying the business behind arts that includes all of live performances through dance, through, like live music and so forth, and what the business looks like, but also from a tech lens. That's how I got into tech. But I think for me, I think I wanted to pursue dancing as an academic discipline so that I can sort of get a degree. I would watch a lot of these international shows like So You Think You Can Dance. And I've always seen myself on those stages. I've always seen myself somehow dancing alongside Beyonce, like we all do. Uh, and I've always seen myself really taking on much more bigger stages through dance.
Yeah. Well, you seem like such a multifaceted, talented person. And then somehow you got into advocating on the behalfs of rights of the LGBTQ plus community. Can you talk a little bit about why that came about?
Mm. So I suppose that through my personality, I guess, and through how I grew up, because we were raised non conventionally or unconventionally in my household, of course, being the only girl and with having also brothers who are my only siblings, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
is that I had a lot of references to their side of the world. But I also think that in as much as I tried to incorporate references from my own world, from a female, I suppose, feminine perspective, there was always some kind of deviation for me. And I suppose that maybe later on, that's when I realized that I'm actually non binary. But I think that throughout the years, with my personality growing through dancing and being so much more confident, playing soccer, and then later on, finding myself at an organization where they advocate for LGBTQ plus persons. This was in 2019. I think at that moment I did find my mecca around where and who I should be, because this is post now also my mom having passed on, and this is now me post coming back from studies in Cape Town and really trying to find my feet, trying to earn a living. And somehow I find myself also now employed at an LGBTQ plus organization as their first advocacy and communications officer. So pardon me. So through that process, that was how I got into LGBTQ plus activism. And I think my why was almost, it wasn't immediate, it was almost thrusted onto me, because at the
Mm.
same time is that I'm at this organization and we are organizing protests on the side, or we are organizing rallies on the side, and somehow as the communications person I now become a mouthpiece, not just for the organization, but through the visibility that this position has put me in. I now become a mouthpiece countrywide for LGBTQ plus people. So I suppose it was through my portfolio in the organization that I became within, the structures and this visibility for an LGBTQ plus activist.
Well, that particular community is lucky to have you on their side. Here in the United States, there's a lot of pushback for people who do that kind of advocacy work. Not so much with gay and lesbian people, but was especially when you get into the binary choices and the transgender population. Here, there's a lot of pushback for that. Do you receive pushback as well? Are there people who are working actively against you?
I think that I didn't expect to receive pushback until after on. I think for me, before I even joined the very first organization that I was working with, I had also been open about my sexuality with my family, and I didn't receive pushback necessarily. I've always been accepted, even when I was playing soccer and I would be almost unconventional in the way I express myself. It was always accepted. But when I joined the organization and becoming then this face of the organization and then also advancing advocacy through the media, I then realized that actually I have taken on quite a lot, but at the same time I realized that there was still rampant entrenched homophobia in our country. So the pushback has always been then since there, and it definitely existed before. The only thing is I became much more aware since I joined the organization.
Yeah. Where do you find your strength to do all this? How do you develop such deep passion and resilience about all the obstacles that you face? Where does that come from? Do you think your mom kind of set the example for that, or did you just kind of have it at just who you are and your character?
I don't know. I think that it's a combination of things, because it's interesting that you asked that question, because recently I've been contemplating around intersectional sustainability, and sustainability also comes out of strength. And what I've learned is, through my mom's organization over the years, she had struggled a little bit to be sustainable as her organization. And I think that my strength is drawn from being sustainable and being secure enough in myself and in the future to take on so many of these issues. And for me, that comes with intellectual strength. I always need to sharpen my mind. I always need to read. I always need to find and figure out ways on how to do things better, to be more innovative. And then the other is also the mental strength. And I think this was when I founded Vipassana meditation in 2018. This was my last year of graduation in Cape Town. And I think I wanted to find other ways for me to really to really deal with my traumas, to deal with my own internal issues. And for some reason, I came across, Yuval Harari, Noah's books. He's one of the most recognized historians. He wrote *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus*, and in the books he wrote about vipassana and how it strengthened him in his writing, and it gave him a lot of durability. And I thought, I want something like that. I want to feel durable in the work that I do, wherever it is that I am. So when I started meditation, it really changed my life again. And so I think that is where I draw a lot of strength from, vitality from. And then, of course, I think I would say I do have a few pillars of strength in my life, in terms of friends and family that have always been there as good soundboards for me to really just reflect on, etc. Beyond that is, I think that I've also been a writer. I would write and express myself. And I mean, right now I'm a published author, but before that, I think writing was one of those areas where I could tap into to express myself. So there was these it's bits and pieces of things, but I think overall I would say meditation currently is sort of like my bread and butter. If I don't meditate, I don't think I get enough strength to do everything that I need to do.
Well, you certainly have a lot on your plate, and there certainly is a lot of things you've accomplished already. You're a pretty young person, but you've done so much. Ndiilokelwa, we have to take a short break, but when we come back, I want to ask you a few more questions about where your desire to work with young people come from, and we'll be
Mhm.
right back.
Awesome.
Right before the break, I mentioned I'd like to talk to you about your work with young people. So, you're a lifelong learner. You've already written books. You've already started companies. You've started a foundation. You're a nationally recognized advocate for LGBTQ rights in your country. And I know you kind of focus on young people too. Why young people? Why do you think that that's so important that you be their voice in your country?
I think because for me as a young person, it comes back to opportunities for me. And this is already reflected in the way that I'm programming activities within our organization and any other activities that I take on, is the longevity and the opportunity to just be seen and to exist. So, for example, I'm working on programs around how to get more young people to be recognized for their writing through publishing anthologies, for example, or assisting them to write opinion pieces for that to be published in the newspapers. And even within our organization, we opened a clinic, we launched a clinic. So we are focusing really on young people who need, stigma free access to healthcare, etc. And I think for me is, when I was younger, I think I felt quite a cloud of shame that engulfed me based on my needs as a young person. And that was particularly because I feel that it's not that my household was like traumatic or anything. I just feel like maybe because I was young, I didn't know whether or not I could ask, or whether or not I could seek these kinds of opportunities. And I was privileged enough to go to to sort of a good school where a few opportunities would come up here and there, like spelling bee competitions, for example, and so forth. But right now, I realize that those were just very, very rare occasions where opportunities would come up and come by. And I think that's why my main focus is really on ensuring that young people are empowered and young people have those opportunities. For example, I do have a colleague of mine. She's much younger, but we are in the activism space. In fact, she is a board member of our organization. And she also has her own business. And, we always talk about how people are gatekeepers within certain communities. I'm even certainly experiencing gatekeeping within my own generation. And I spoke to her about her businesses, and in a matter of a week, I got her to register her company because I know how important it was for her. And I know how important it was just in terms of longevity, institutionalizing, and really making sure that you become sustainable in the future. So I think for me, young people are always going to be very front and center in all the decisions that we take, because I lacked that same kind of attention in my own in my own childhood and in my own background and growing up, etc. So that's why it's really close to my heart.
Yeah, I can tell. And you had a supportive family. They might not have understood you perfectly, but you had a supported family, and you did have opportunities, even though they were limited. And Ndiilokelwa, I think of like the young people who are like you, full of talent, full of skill, and artistic, and just everything you want out of a human being. And so many young people like you never get the opportunities to do things. Do you ever think about that? Like, think of how much talent we've suppressed in the history of the human, the human
Mhm.
race. How many people like you have never been allowed to blossom, and to where would we be today? I mean, do you ever ponder that and think about that? Because I know I do. I'm so impressed by you, and I've worked with young people, and I see their talents, and I know some of them have never had the chance to develop into who they should be.
Mm, I definitely do, because it started a long time ago when I was told that I can't pursue dancing because it doesn't bring any kind of financial stability. And over the years, maybe I believed it too much that when I did go study in Cape Town, even though I was accepted for arts, I couldn't afford it and I decided to opt for something else to stay a little bit closer to the arts. But that has had me mourn, my past life, mourn my talents, mourn what could have been, what I might have been. And that comes back to also my tech company, because the tech company looks at how individuals can traverse across different industries in a single, given moment where they work and they maximize themselves. And at the heart of it is really self-actualization, because I knew from the very beginning when I founded the company that people are multi-skilled and multi-talented, and they shouldn't have to sit at one office space for so many hours whilst all the other talents are being underutilized. And I think that speaks to especially my motto, my ethos around, and even just my principles around how I value people's potential, and why the potential needs to constantly be harnessed from all other aspects. Even within my organization, for the clinic itself, we are currently employing about almost 20 people, and all of them are employed at other establishments, and they also work at us at our establishment, not necessarily as part-time, but within the non-conventional model of working through which my tech company actually is founded. Because what we recognized is, yes, we realize that, that the world is changing, the world of work is changing. You cannot keep someone in one space constantly all the time. But also because they have so much more to offer now, they can traverse their ideas between their company and our company, and we are actually growing much better. So I suppose that it's always been on my mind around how many of us have to mourn a past life, or a life that is still trying to come back into every other different facet, of what you are doing. For example, with me, with the arts and the dancing, I'm always incorporating arts in anything else that I do programmatically, and that gives me closer to the arts. It's something, but I definitely always think about how many more people we have lost through them having to reinvent themselves.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Mm.
You talked about empowering young people, help them develop and become develop their skills in a way that's beneficial for them. How do you think the best way to empower young people? What's the best strategy for that? Because I know all youth workers, that's kind of their goal. Anybody who works with young people, you want to give them the courage, the confidence, the understanding that they can do what they want if they have people that believe in them. So, how do you think the best way to empower young people is?
Mm. I think for me, the most basic and simple answer, but also reflection on that, is really, first, you need to believe in them. But then, secondly, is you need to also, the leadership needs to be there. So by leadership, I mean those qualities around your confidence. It needs to be harnessed. You need to make sure that they are confident in themselves. And then you need to believe in them, believe in their goals, believe in their dreams, believe in whatever it is that they want to achieve. Because ultimately, I think it comes back to confidence. But then you cannot have just confidence. You need leadership and you need discipline. And I think this is one of the ways that young people, I suppose, even within my own generation, having been an activist probably for the last 3 years now, is that there's quite a lot that I've learned. But if I didn't have the foundations from when I started Vipassana meditation, from when I took on the business course in South Africa that led me to become a business leader for my tech company, to when I became a different kind of person later on as an activist, etc. If I didn't have the foundation, I think I would be an overconfident individual with no substance, I suppose, and with which who lacks self-awareness and with a big ego. So I think that leadership is very important, but young people need to be seen, and they need their ideas and goals to really, people need to really believe in them so that they can build their confidence enough and their foundation as individuals enough and become leaders in whatever way that they can. Mm.
I can't imagine the things you're going to accomplish in your life and the good you're going to bring to this world. And I know that that will probably always change and shift and grow because you're a continuous learner, always taking on the next task. But what are you working on right now, Ndiilokelwa? What is the thing that just is pushing you really hard just today? What are you focused on?
Mm. So the main thing currently pushing me today is the clinic. And it's a full circle moment. And this is something I was reflecting on yesterday. The writing about intersectional sustainability is the full circle moment where my mom was a nurse, and she was also working in the state hospital and in another clinic at some point, and she was focusing on mothers and women, and my clinic focuses on women, intersectionality, and ensuring that women and the LGBTQ people, they have options, they have choices, and they really attain that level of reproductive justice that is otherwise completely removed from their everyday experience. So my main focus is on ensuring that the clinic is running as smoothly as it can be. So beyond and above that is on with the clinic is really around building systems, building institutions, finding other ways to be more sustainable, to have more foundation, to have more security. And that comes back to us now trying to open a restaurant where it is linked to activism, where our our signature cocktails will touch on feminism, consent, having a cocktail of patriarchy, for example, what that looks like, and working within different civil society spaces for us to arrive at specific mixes and flavors, especially with the dishes, to make sure that we are environmentally conscious, we are conscious of everything else, also within inclusion for the persons with a disability, for them to also find their identities and being represented through our menu. So we are trying to make sure that we expand much further, and that is where I want to be at right now. The visibility has been there for the past 3 years, and yes, perhaps I am recognizable now, but I think that I need to feel a little bit more grounded, and that is through expansion. We want to expand the clinics. I want to open the restaurant. I want to launch a wine, and maybe I will write more books. But I think it's really about institutionalizing at this point to be sustainable.
I am so inspired listening to you. I feel that I have a passion. I feel like I'm not on your level. I just am so pleased you reached out and we had the opportunity to meet. I feel like I'm a better person just from spending a little time with you. And so I want to thank you on behalf of all the young people that you are impacting and just the communities that you are champion who need a champion on their side. And you are the person to create change. And so thank you for everything you do. And thanks for being a guest on our little Passionate Youth Worker podcast. I can't imagine what your future brings for you.
Thank you so much, and I'm really inspired once more through this podcast, through this interview, and I'm very grateful to have met you and your team. I am looking forward to the future, and I'm looking forward to sharing everything else that I'm doing this side with you and your team.
Before we go, we always give the guest the last words. So, Dilo, what words of wisdom or inspiration would you like to leave with our listeners?
Mm. Yeah, okay. I think that I feel that I want young people to it comes back to to our interview, what I spoke about earlier. I really wish that more people would see young people and truly see them, not see them as some tokenistic kind of representation, not see them as visibility stunts, or not see them as quotas within their donor funding programs, not see them as you know people to are supposed to pity or to look down on, but I really to really see them, to really see who they are, to really see what their minds are, to pay attention to them, pay attention to what they want for themselves, and to really give them the chance just to breathe and to feel as open as possible. Otherwise, I think that most young people will come into activism from a survival point of view, and it's really just for them to also find a way to make a living instead of to make a difference. So I think that I want young people to be seen enough for them to make a difference.